Picture this. A 47-year-old millionaire is lying on a medical table while his teenage son's blood flows into his veins. No, this isn't the opening scene of a vampire movie that went straight to streaming. This is Tuesday for Bryan Johnson, and he paid good money for it. Welcome to the part of the video where I'm supposed to blow your mind with shocking facts. So here it is. Silicon Valley tech bros are literally injecting themselves with teenager blood for $8,000 a pop. The FDA says it's quackery, the billionaires say it's the future, and I'm here to tell you it's somehow even dumber than it sounds. But before you click away thinking you've stumbled onto some fringe conspiracy channel, let me be clear. Every single thing I'm about to tell you is documented, peer-reviewed, and reported by major news outlets. The problem isn't that I'm making this up. The problem is that reality has become so absurd that the truth sounds like satire. So stick around for the next chunk of your finite existence while we dive into the world of immortality cults, where venture capitalists cosplay as vampires, frozen heads wait in Arizona warehouses for resurrection, and death is just another bug to patch. And look, if watching rich people make terrible medical decisions is as entertaining to you as it is to me, hit that subscribe button. I promise to keep documenting humanity's most expensive mistakes. Let's start with the blindingly obvious. Humans have been trying to cheat death since humans figured out what death was. Every single immortality seeker throughout history died anyway. Shocking, I know. Ancient Chinese emperors chugged mercury thinking it was an elixir of life. Plot twist, it wasn't. It just poisoned them faster. The first Qin emperor literally sent thousands of young people on a doomed voyage to find the mythical elixir. Spoiler alert, they didn't find it, and he still died. Medieval alchemists brewed toxic cocktails searching for the philosopher's stone, which they believed could transmute lead into gold and grant eternal life. Because why settle for one impossible goal when you can fail at two simultaneously? Today's tech billionaires, they've just swapped the mercury for teenage plasma and called it disruption. Same desperate fantasy, better marketing budget. But before I tell you the most disturbing part, and trust me, we're getting there, you need to understand the science behind this circus. The whole young blood thing started with something called parabiosis, which is exactly as creepy as it sounds. Picture this. Scientists in the 1950s decided the best way to study aging was to surgically join two mice together so they share a single circulatory system. One old mouse, one young mouse, sutured together like some kind of rodent horror movie. The early results were largely anecdotal, which is scientists speak for, we think we saw something, but we're not really sure and nobody bothered to properly document it. But wait, it gets worse. Sometimes the younger mouse just died. Unexpectedly. From what appeared to be immune rejection. So we're not just talking about questionable science here. We're talking about experiments where the supposed fountain of youth was, dying. The young, healthy donor mouse, the one providing the allegedly magical, rejuvenating blood, kept dying. If the procedure meant to extend life is killing the young and healthy, maybe that's nature's way of telling you to stop. But did that stop anyone? Oh, you sweet summer child. Later studies got even murkier. Turns out the benefits might not have been from gaining the young blood's magical properties at all. Instead, it might have just been diluting the old blood's harmful factors. It's the medical equivalent of watering down poison and calling it a health drink. This murky, ethically questionable, and wildly inconclusive animal research became the foundation for a multi-thousand-dollar industry for humans. Enter Ambrosia, a company that sounds like it was named by a vampire who took a marketing class. Founded by a medical school graduate who, and this is crucial, did not have a license to practice medicine. Ambrosia charged clients $8,000 for infusions of plasma from young donors. They called it a clinical trial, which is hilarious because actual clinical trials require, scientific methodology, control groups, peer review, that boring stuff. Ambrosia's trial had no control arm, none. It was scientifically meaningless. It was less a research study and more a very expensive placebo dressed up in a lab coat. Imagine if I sold you a rock and claimed it prevented tiger attacks. Then, when you didn't get attacked by a tiger, I pointed to the rock and said, "See? It works." That's basically what Ambrosia was doing, except the rock cost $8 grand and was made of someone's blood. The FDA, yes, an actual government agency, had to issue a warning in 2019 stating that these treatments have no proven clinical benefits and expressing concern that some patients are being preyed upon by unscrupulous actors. When a government bureaucracy uses the phrase unscrupulous actors, you know it's bad. These are people who have to remain diplomatically neutral about almost everything. They could watch someone juggle chainsaws in a preschool and they'd issue a statement about potential safety concerns. The contemporary quest for immortality is championed by a new class of prophets, the tech billionaire. Their gospel is one of technological solutionism, and their central tenet is that death is not a metaphysical inevitability, but a technical problem, a bug in the human source code that can be patched, debugged, and ultimately overcome. This worldview makes perfect sense when you remember these are the same people who think every human problem can be solved with an app. Homelessness? There's an app for that. Climate change? Probably just needs better algorithms. Death? Just another engineering challenge. The fact that evolution has been working on this problem for 3.8 billion years longer than they have doesn't seem to faze them. The movement's most visible messiah is bryanjohnson, a 47-year-old tech entrepreneur who sold his payment processing company to PayPal for $800 million. He now spends a reported $2 million per year on Project Blueprint, which sounds like a supervillain's plan because, well, look at what he's doing. Johnson is explicit about his mission. He's not just trying to live longer. He's framing his don't die philosophy as a new religion designed to guide humanity into an era of alignment with artificial intelligence. Yes, this man is trying to start a religion about not dying, to prepare us for our AI overlords. A day in the life of bryanjohnson reads like dystopian fiction written by someone who hates joy. He wakes naturally around 4:30 a.m., having gone to bed precisely at 8:30 p.m. the night before like a well-behaved toddler. His morning involves a battery of measurements, red light therapy, and the consumption of over 100 pills and supplements. His diet is a Spartan 1,977 calories composed of vegan meals with names like Super Veggie, a bland-sounding puree of black lentils, broccoli, and cauliflower, and Nutty Pudding. I'm sorry, but if immortality requires eating something called nutty pudding every day, I'm choosing death. But wait. Here's where it gets genuinely unsettling. Johnson has declared his own mind unauthorized to make decisions about food or lifestyle. He's personified his cravings as 7 p.m. Brian, a mischievous rascal who wants pizza. A grown man has created an imaginary friend to blame for wanting carbs. This is the same psychological mechanism that children use, except children eventually grow out of it. Johnson's home has been converted into a private medical clinic, complete with a longevity room housing a hyperbaric oxygen chamber, advanced skin analysis systems, and a kernel flow helmet for monitoring brain activity. It's like if Tony Stark's workshop and a hospital had a baby, and that baby had severe control issues. And remember that blood transfusion thing I mentioned? Johnson literally had a 3-generation blood swap party with his dad and his teenage son, a project he ultimately abandoned after seeing no benefits. Let that sink in. He swapped blood with his own child, found out it didn't work, and just moved on to the next experiment. No big deal. Just another Tuesday in the life of someone with too much money and not enough ethics oversight. If Johnson is the public face of the movement, Peter Thiel is its powerful and enigmatic benefactor. Thiel has declared that he is fundamentally against death, a truly groundbreaking philosophical stance. Really going out on a limb there, Peter. But Thiel doesn't just talk about it. He's signed up for cryopreservation as an ideological statement and funnels millions of dollars into longevity research. He believes that biology can be understood in informational terms, and that the aging process can therefore be reversed. It's the same logic that leads software engineers to think they can fix any problem with enough code. Except in this case, the bug is literally billions of years of evolution. Thiel was an early investor in the SENS Research Foundation, which we'll get to in a minute. He's backed nearly a dozen longevity companies that have collectively raised over $70 billion. That's not a typo. $70 billion. For context, that's more than the GDP of some countries, spent on trying to make rich people live forever. But Thiel isn't alone. This is a whole movement of tech elites throwing money at the Grim Reaper and hoping he'll just go away. Larry Ellison, Oracle co-founder, has spent roughly $430 million on aging research, asking rhetorically why anyone should just vanish after death. I don't know, Larry. Maybe because that's how being mortal works? Just a thought. Then there's Altos Labs, launched in 2022 with a staggering $3 billion in initial funding from backers including Jeff Bezos and Yuri Milner. Their goal is to transform medicine through cellular rejuvenation programming. Translation: make old cells young again. The problem? They're essentially trying to tell cells to ignore billions of years of evolutionary programming. What could possibly go wrong? Even younger CEO have joined the party. Sam Altman, the man behind OpenAI, invested $180 million into retro biosciences. Mark Zuckerberg has backed longevity startups and prize programs. These people are treating life extension like the newest luxury investment, complete with private health optimization doctors and custom regimens. It's a hobby with a very high price tag and an even higher chance of catastrophic failure. The longevity movement has spawned its own pantheon of self-styled gurus and prophets, each peddling their own flavor of eternal life. Think of them as the apostles of absurdity, and trust me, they're quite the cast of characters. Elizabeth Parrish, CEO of BioViva, decided the best way to prove her company's experimental anti-aging gene therapies work was to become patient zero. And because the FDA wouldn't authorize her to turn herself into a science experiment in the United States, something about safety and ethics, she traveled to Colombia in 2015 to inject herself with experimental treatments. One therapy was designed to lengthen telomeres, the protective caps on chromosomes that shorten with age. Another was meant to inhibit myostatin to prevent muscle loss. The scientific community's response? They labeled it medical quackery. George M. Martin, a prominent professor of pathology, was so appalled that he resigned from BioViva's advisory board in protest. But Parrish, who is not a scientist by training, defended her decision with the zeal of a true believer. She argued that delaying access to such therapies is nearly a form of murder. According to her logic, stopping her from injecting herself with untested gene therapy in a foreign country is basically murder. The mental gymnastics required for that statement deserve an Olympic medal. Here's the thing. Meddling with telomeres is risky because they're part of your body's cancer suppression system. Making them longer could theoretically increase your cancer risk. But who needs boring things like long-term safety studies when you have faith and conviction? Then there's Dave Asprey, founder of the Bulletproof Empire and inventor of Bulletproof Coffee. Coffee blended with grass-fed butter and MCT oil. He claims, without evidence, that this concoction helped boost his IQ by more than 20 points. I'm not sure what his IQ was before, but if it required butter coffee to become functional, we might want to question the validity of the measurement system. Asprey built a brand on biohacking through diet, creating a high-fat, low-carbohydrate regimen that demonizes a wide range of foods as toxic, including soy, wheat, and, I kid you not, microwaved vegetables. His central claim is that conventional coffee is full of mycotoxins, mold toxins that are poisoning you. The problem? Dietitians and physicians widely criticize these claims as unscientific. The British Dietetic Association labeled his diet a fad, and critics note his complete lack of medical or nutritional training. But why let the absence of credentials stop you when you can sell overpriced coffee to people who think butter is a superfood? His company has received warning letters from the FTC and FDA for making unsupported health claims. But in the wellness industry, regulatory warnings are basically just free advertising. Aubrey de Grey is perhaps the intellectual architect of the modern longevity movement. A biomedical gerontologist with a background in computer science, because clearly programming and biology are basically the same thing, he founded the SENS Research Foundation. His central thesis is that aging is simply an accumulation of 7 types of cellular and molecular damage, and if we can develop therapies to repair this damage, we can achieve engineered negligible senescence. He's famous for claiming that the first person to live to 1,000 is likely already alive. Let me repeat that. 1,000 years old. Not 100, not 120. A full millennium. To put that in perspective, if someone born in 1025 were still alive today, they would have witnessed the Norman Conquest, the entire Renaissance, both world wars, and the invention of TikTok. That's the level of optimism we're dealing with. The mainstream scientific community remains deeply skeptical. In 2005, a group of 28 leading biogerontologists co-authored a paper concluding that de Grey's program falls into the realm of fantasy and that none of his proposed therapies had ever been shown to extend the lifespan of any organism. That's scientist speak for, this is complete nonsense, but we're too polite to say it that bluntly. His reputation was further complicated when allegations of sexual harassment in 2021 led to his departure from the foundation he co-founded. Turns out, immortality research doesn't make you immune to being a creep. These prophets have their sacred rituals, and chief among them is the daily consumption of dozens of supplements. Welcome to the pharmacopoeia of false hope, where pills promise eternal youth and deliver expensive pee. NMN, nicotinamide mononucleotide. The miracle molecule du jour, promoted as boosting cellular NAD+ levels to reverse aging. A 2024 systematic review concluded it generally did not improve measures of muscle strength or physical function in older adults. Furthermore, the FDA reclassified it as an investigational drug, restricting its sale as a dietary supplement. But why let facts get in the way of a good marketing campaign? Metformin, a diabetes drug hailed as a potential anti-aging wonder. Studies in worms and mice showed promise, but the precise mechanism remains unknown. Effects are inconsistent, and some research suggests it may actually blunt the health benefits of exercise. So you could be taking a drug that makes your workouts less effective. Brilliant. Rapamycin. Originally an immunosuppressant to prevent organ transplant rejection, it's now the darling of biohackers because it extended lifespan in mice. The catch? It's a potent drug with significant side effects including weakened immunity, mouth sores, elevated cholesterol, and increased blood clot risk. Even Bryan Johnson discontinued it after nearly 5 years due to adverse effects. When the guy taking 100+ pills a day says, "This one's too risky," maybe listen. Longevity doctors report patients arriving with a laundry list of trendy supplements, many dangerously overdosed. One biohacker who really overdid it ended up biologically 4 years older than his chronological age, with kidney damage to boot. He literally aged himself faster trying to reverse aging. You can't make this up. As one pharmacologist notes, taking 50 pills a day that are interfering with every metabolic pathway is obviously a recipe for disaster. There's no evidence that stacking supplements provides additive benefits. In fact, experts say there's no evidence that taking 2 supplements is better than 1, but the wellness industry would really prefer you didn't think about that too hard while checking out with their shopping cart full of expensive placebos. For the record, BryanJohnson sells his own longevity mix of trendy compounds. Because if you're going to preach the gospel, you might as well profit from it. If swapping blood and popping pills sounds too mainstream for your taste, don't worry. The immortality cult has even more bizarre options for the discerning death avoider. Around 500 people, mostly Americans, have been frozen in liquid nitrogen at minus 196 degrees Celsius, hoping future science can revive them. In Arizona, the Alcor Life Extension Facility holds over 200 patients. And yes, they call them patients, not corpses, in dewars that look like industrial beer tanks. As one satirist quipped, it's basically a brewery of dead bodies. Each membership costs a fortune, about $220,000 for whole body preservation, or $80,000 if you just want to freeze your head. Yes, your severed head. The logic being that future scientists can just grow you a new body, which is definitely a thing that will happen, and not at all science fiction wishful thinking. Here's my favorite part. Estate lawyers now draft revival trusts, so your fortune can wait out centuries until you maybe come back. Imagine, your great-great-great-grandchildren could be competing for inheritance with your reanimated frozen head. Family reunions are going to be awkward. As one Alcor lawyer quipped, cryopreservation has gone from crackpot to merely eccentric, but only the exceedingly well-off sign up. It's immortality for the 1%, where even death has a premium tier. The fundamental problem with cryonics, the technology to revive frozen humans, doesn't exist. It's never been demonstrated in any mammal. They're essentially gambling that future scientists will figure it out, want to revive them, and somehow have the resources to do so. It's like buying a lottery ticket for a lottery that hasn't been invented yet. But why freeze your body when you can upload your mind? Welcome to the most science fiction corner of the immortality cult. In Russia, media mogul Dmitry Itskov founded the 2045 initiative to achieve cybernetic immortality. He envisions uploading minds into AI-controlled avatars or holograms. He's 100% confident it will happen by 2045, which is exactly the kind of baseless confidence that gets you funding in this space. In the United States, Nectome, an MIT spin-off, claims they can preserve your brain's wiring so future computers could, in theory, reconstruct your mind. There's just one tiny catch. The preservation process requires your brain to be fresh, as in you have to die for it to work. And not just die, be euthanized under controlled conditions. They're literally selling, you can live forever, you just have to die first. The irony is so thick you could cut it with a scalpel. Here's what researchers won't say out loud, but I will. The human brain has approximately 86 billion neurons, each connected to thousands of others through trillions of synapses. The connectome, the complete map of neural connections, is orders of magnitude more complex than anything we've successfully preserved in lab mice, let alone reconstructed digitally. Dr. Saul Villeda at UCSF reminds us we're still at the level of mouse models and humans are far more complicated. But sure, let's bet our entire consciousness on technology that doesn't exist, hasn't been tested, and violates several laws of physics and neuroscience. What could possibly go wrong? Here's where we need to talk about the elephant in the room. Actually, more like the dragon sitting on a pile of gold. The quest for eternal life isn't just a fringe hobby anymore. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Over the past 25 years, the world's top billionaires have poured over $5 billion into longevity ventures, transforming what was once a fringe academic field into a hotbed of investment. And when I say hotbed, I mean a tightly connected network of Silicon Valley elites all betting on the same thing, that they can buy their way out of death. Peter Thiel stands out as a core node in this network, having supported nearly a dozen longevity companies that have collectively raised over $70 billion. Yes, billion with a B. This is money that could feed nations, cure diseases, or address climate change. Instead, it's being poured into making rich people live longer. These aren't mom-and-pop operations. This is serious capital chasing the ultimate exit strategy from mortality itself. This top-down investment has spawned a consumer-facing industry of high-end longevity clinics. These establishments charge fees that would make a luxury resort blush. Annual programs ranging from $10,000 to over $150,000. A comprehensive initial evaluation alone can cost $25,000. Let me put that in perspective. $25,000 to be told to eat vegetables and exercise. Information freely available on the internet. This commercialization exemplifies the key problem: profit before evidence. Venture capital, not rigorous science, is driving innovation. The question isn't, does this work? But, will investors believe it might work? And in Silicon Valley, belief is currency. For the tech elite, radical life extension represents the ultimate competitive advantage. These are people known for their interest in escaping conventional constraints, seasteading, luxury doomsday bunkers, colonizing space. Immortality is the logical culmination of this worldview. If death is the one great equalizer that threatens to separate them from their accumulated wealth and power, the solution isn't to re-evaluate their relationship with wealth. It's to eliminate death. As former Facebook president Sean Parker once said, he expects to live to 160 and become part of a class of immortal overlords. At least he's honest about the supervillain endgame. Let's talk about what happens if these people actually succeed. Spoiler alert, it's not pretty. The most immediate consequence would be biological apartheid. Right now, only the wealthy can afford these extremes. $8,000 transfusions, $220,000 cryopreservation, multi-million-dollar gene therapies. If life extension works, we create a permanent class of have-mores who can hoard wealth and exercise power over extraordinary periods of time. Think wealth inequality is bad now? Imagine when Jeff Bezos has been compound investing for 300 years. The gap between rich and poor wouldn't be measured in dollars anymore. It would be measured in decades or centuries of life. A world where some people live to 150 and others die at 70 isn't a future society. It's feudalism with better technology. Even if these technologies were made universally available, which, let's be honest, they won't be, society would face catastrophic overpopulation. A world where death rates plummet but birth rates don't would quickly strain food, water, and energy resources to breaking point. The result? A lower quality of life for everyone. You'd live longer, sure, but in a vastly more crowded, resource-depleted world. Congratulations, you're immortal! Your prize is eternal gridlock traffic and waiting in line for everything. Here's what nobody talks about: the psychological dangers of endless existence. Classical literature has explored this theme for centuries. In Jonathan Swift's Gulliver's Travels, the immortal Struldbrugs aren't enlightened sages, they're miserable, avaricious, emotionally detached creatures. Swift suggests immortality wouldn't perfect human virtue, it would magnify our deficiencies. A physically immortal life would be defined by constant, paralyzing fear of accidental death. With eternity at stake, any risk, a car crash, a fall, a violent encounter, becomes an existential threat of infinite proportions. You'd potentially live a life of timid isolation, too scared to leave your bubble-wrapped mansion because every moment outside is a gamble with infinity. Even speculative fiction like Black Mirror's San Junipero explores this. Even a heavenly immortality comes with profound emotional costs and existential dilemmas. What makes life meaningful is partially its finitude. Remove the deadline, and you might remove the meaning. Amidst all this futuristic hype and quasi-religious fervor, mainstream science offers a crucial, grounding counter-narrative, and you're going to hate how boring it is. Gerontologists emphasize that aging is a natural biological process, not a disease to be cured. This perspective directly refutes the disease-mongering that underpins the longevity industry's business model. If aging isn't a disease, you can't sell a cure. And that's very inconvenient for people selling cures. Experts work to debunk common myths. Significant cognitive decline isn't inevitable. Regular exercise is safe and beneficial for older adults. and seniors contribute immense value to society. Aging isn't the horror show the longevity industry wants you to believe it is. Critics highlight a pervasive culture of profit before evidence. Expensive, unproven interventions are marketed to a fearful public. The obsession with exhaustive testing often leads to overdiagnosis, detecting clinically irrelevant abnormalities that trigger cascades of unnecessary, costly, anxiety-inducing follow-up procedures. You know what? Even Peter Attia, a prominent biohacking figure, has expressed disdain for the term biohacking. He argues it misleadingly implies the existence of shortcuts and distracts from foundational practices that actually work. So what actually works? Brace yourself for the most radical, cutting-edge advice science has to offer. Regular physical exercise, a nutritious diet, sufficient high-quality sleep, meaningful social relationships, and equitable access to proven medical care. That's it. That's the list. No teenage blood, no frozen heads, no 100-pill-a-day regimens. Just the same boring advice your grandmother gave you for free. All these billionaires, all this money, all this technology, and the answer was, go for a walk and eat your vegetables the entire time. The irony is so perfect, it hurts. So there you have it, the complete saga of humanity's latest attempt to give death the finger. From ancient emperor drinking mercury to modern CEOs drinking teenager blood, we've truly come full circle in the stupidity department. The quest to conquer death isn't new. It's etched into our earliest surviving work of literature, the Epic of Gilgamesh, which tells of a king's desperate journey to find a plant that grants immortality, only to have it stolen by a serpent at the last moment. 4,000 years later, we're still writing the same story. The only difference is the special effects budget. What have we learned today, folks? Well, death is still undefeated, billionaires have too much money and questionable judgment, and somewhere out there, a venture capitalist is probably pitching Uber, but for immortality, to a room full of people who should know better. The ultimate irony? Bryan Johnson, our blueprint prophet, was caught crying on camera admitting it's not a good thing to be alone. Turns out, optimizing every second of your existence to live forever might just make you forget to actually live. You become so obsessed with adding years to your life that you forget to add life to your years. Who could have seen that coming? Oh, right, literally everyone except the people spending millions on this nonsense. The modern longevity movement, with all its talk of algorithms, cellular rejuvenation, and data-driven protocols, is just the latest chapter in humanity's oldest and most absurd saga. An ancient emperor drinking a concoction of mercury isn't so different from a modern tech billionaire injecting himself with untested gene therapies or transfusing his son's blood. Both are driven by the same profound refusal to accept the most basic limitation of the human condition. We all die. The question isn't whether we can live forever. It's whether a life dedicated solely to its own perpetuation is worth living at all. A life defined by punishing regimens, bland food, social isolation, and constant anxiety about preserving every additional day. That's not immortality. That's just a very long prison sentence. Perhaps the true elixir of life isn't a substance to be consumed, but wisdom to be cultivated, the acceptance of our finitude, and the commitment to live the time we have with meaning, connection, and maybe even a little joy. Radical concept, I know. In conclusion, while these immortality cultists are injecting themselves with everything but common sense, actual scientists are over here like, maybe try eating a salad and calling your mom. But hey, that's not nearly as exciting as becoming a vampire capitalist with a freezer full of heads in Arizona, is it? If you enjoyed watching me lose my last shred of faith in Silicon Valley's decision-making abilities, go ahead and hit that like button. And subscribe if you want to keep tabs on whatever insane thing billionaires decide to inject themselves with next week. Trust me, at the rate they're going, by next month, someone will be transplanting dolphin organs for aquatic longevity, or installing a second heart for cardiovascular redundancy, or some equally ridiculous nonsense. Remember, we're all going to die. The only question is whether we'll do it with dignity, frozen in an Arizona warehouse next to someone's cryogenic head, or biologically 4 years older than we started because we overdosed on supplements. Choose wisely. Thanks for sticking around to the bitter end. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go for a walk, eat some vegetables, and call my mom. You know, the actual proven methods for living a good life. Revolutionary stuff.
Satire.